Hello there, my name is Claus, and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today's number 93, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about an innovation tool, the naming of theories. Now first off, this is a little bit nerdy. Let's be fair. It's about theory, it's about names, and when you combine those two, what do you have? Well, in this case, you have the naming of theories. Now I know that may seem even more long-haired than I am, but it actually matters. It especially matters when it comes to innovation. Why? Well, let's dive into that. Theories are useful. This is the first point I want to make. They make the world simpler. They make us able to understand how things are. One of the really nice things about personality profiles or theories on business or theories on organizations is that instead of having this huge complex reality that we live in, which is really hard to grasp, then we can say, oh, he's one of these 16 personality types, or she's a 4, or this is a red organization, or whatever it is. Theories are good because they make the world simpler and make it easier to navigate. Now, how you name them, that matters. Why does it matter? Because a good name is descriptive. A good name is something where you're like, oh, you get an idea of what's going on. Any name can work. I could say that a theory I've come up with on how to design opening experiences for live events, which is something I've done for many, many years. I have some theory on that. And I could describe that as the... And you're like, what was that? It's so bad a name that I can't even say it the same twice. I'm not even able to reproduce my own name. It is that bad. So a good name, on the other hand, is descriptive. You get a sense of what's going on from the name itself. A good name is memorable. You're able to remember like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Instead of something that goes on and on and on. The theory of relativity. Oh, cool, right? A lot of us have heard of that. A lot of us know what that is. Even if we may not remember the mathematical symbols for it, E equals mc squared, then we'll at least have heard of the theory of relativity, which in Danish is relativitetsteorien, because it's memorable. Now, what it describes, is it descriptive? Well, it does describe that everything is relative, but it's not a top contender. So a really good theory is self-explanatory. The great man theory of history. Guess what that's about? Well, obviously, again, this is a one-way thing, so I can't hear if your guesses are what I expect them to be, but if you present somebody, and I've done this in classrooms, if you present, what do you think the great man theory of history is? Most people, even if they have no concept of historical theory at all, they'll say, well, I guess it's something about history being shaped by great men, maybe even great women at times, so that when we look at history, we should look at individuals. Another way of looking at history is the materialist theory of history, which looks at history through a different lens, which says when technology changes and when the way we can access the material wealth of the world, when that changes, that's what drives history. So it's not the great men and great women of history, it's materialism. It's how we are able to access the material world, how we're able to shape that. That's what drives history. Now, these are both great lenses for looking at history. Which one you prefer, which one makes most sense, depends very much on what you're discussing. But they are, especially the great man theory, is pretty self-explanatory. If you look at something like Huizinga's magic circle, I've used this a lot, especially in my previous work with events and with play. You may have no idea what this is because who's Huizinga? Like, huh? And what's this magic circle? Is it like a guideline for wizards, or was it? Well, Huizinga's magic circle is a nifty bit of theory that says when you create a magic circle, a different sort of space, you need to define it several ways. It needs to be defined by who's in it, how long does it exist, and where are the limits of it. It could be a boxing arena. If you're inside the boxing arena, well, then you're allowed to hit the other guy. If you're not inside the boxing arena, then it may be the same guy who was there, but you're not allowed to just punch him in the locker room. And even if you're in the arena, if there's no boxing match, you're not allowed to punch people either. So you need to be at the right place, the right time, and it needs to be defined by the right people before a magic circle exists. Really nice and useful piece of theory for creating events. But it doesn't exactly explain that. If I just say, oh, that reminds me of Huizinga's magic circle, you're going to go, huh? Where great man theory of history? A lot more self-explanatory. You can also talk about Planck's constant. Now, I kid you not, I'm going to quote from a Google search on the internet, because a lot of people do not know what Planck's constant is. Of course they don't. There is a Google search will reveal to you the following kind of sub things. You know, when you Google stuff, then Google itself spits out, like, here are questions you could ask, then you can click them. So I Googled Planck's constant just to see what would show up. And then one of them says, people are also asking, what is Planck's constant in simple format? And I will quote you directly from my Google search. The Planck constant, Planck's constant, says how much the energy of a photon increases when the frequency of its electromagnetic wave increases by 1 in SI units in parentheses. I love that parenthesis because, of course, we're talking in SI units, right? To most people, that is complete and utter gibberish. And the fact that it's called Planck's constant, named after Max Planck, doesn't really help them. As the name goes, it's memorable. It rolls off the tongue nicely, but it's not exactly explanatory in any way. Simon Sinek, I know this is a book title, but it's also something that he has espoused as a leadership theorist, and many others have used this as, if not a piece of leadership theory, then at least a mantra. Start with why. Boom, there you have it. You see the cover of the book, okay, I understand this point, don't need the book. Understand the point, don't need all the data. Start with why. Instead of start with how or with what or with who, you start with why you're doing it. Simple, bam, brilliant. If you're going to create theory as part of your innovation process, whatever that may be, whether you're in physical products or you are in creating new movements, I don't care. If you are going to create theory, and a lot of us actually end up doing that, especially as we progress in our journeys and we become a little bit, we grow and we need to standardize things, then please consider the name. Why? Why? Self-explanatory theory names are just better. It's that simple. It may not seem relevant to you. It does matter to the rest of us, because there's a hell of a difference between Planck's constant and the great man theory of history. One of them, you have no clue what it is. The other, it's kind of self-explanatory. It travels easier as an idea. It spreads easier as an idea virus. By the way, a very nice, nifty name from Seth Godin, idea virus. If you want to make it easy on yourself, if you want to make it easy for your word to spread, your work to spread, your ideas to spread, then it should matter to you. That's actually not just a good idea. It's a quote from a very relevant piece of theory. That piece of theory is not as elegant as E equals mc squared as the theory of relativity, but it's close. The theory in question is, of course, Claus' theory of self-explanatory theory names. And that says, from end to end, I quote you, self-explanatory theory names are just better.